The chandelier trembled a fraction of a second before anyone screamed, like it could sense the ruin in the air. Maya Ibarra had a tray of champagne balanced on her fingertips when 5 men rose in the same breath, their chairs scraping the marble like knives. By the time the first glass shattered, she had already decided who would live. Before we begin, if this kind of story speaks to your heart, feel free to share where you're watching from. It's always beautiful to see how far stories like this can travel. Enjoy the story. Chapter 1, The Velvet Hour Elysian on the 70th floor was a restaurant that tried to smooth the city's edges. Cream walls bent softly around a floor that mirrored star-strewn space, the ceiling low enough to be intimate but high enough for breath. A pianist tested a minor chord in the corner. The air smelled like butter, seared lamb, and the lemon of something neat and expensive in crystal. Maya Ibarra had learned to glide through a room without rippling it. The tray rode her palm like a second thought, her spine a vine trained straight by years of yes, chef, and right away. Loose hair tucked behind one ear, black shoes quiet, eyes everywhere. She'd already noticed the asymmetry, the way the 5 men were spaced across the dining room as if from different lives but drawn by one magnet. A man in a serviceable suit at a window table who didn't touch the water. A heavy-set guy in a hoodie whose gaze skipped every time the doors to the kitchen swung. A pair who pretended they were strangers but flinched like brothers when the pianist hit a wrong note. A kid at the bar with clean hands but bitten cuticles. Posture too straight for a long day of work. The TV in the bar corner, volume off, was looping footage of a smiling man stepping from a private jet. Elias Rourke, billionaire CEO, philanthropist, destroyer, savior, depending on the thread you read. Rourke arrived 9 minutes late, like an expensive apology. He was smaller than he looked on screens and somehow lighter, like someone had scribbled his outline with pencil and he hadn't realized he could step outside it yet. The maitre d' flattered him with bows that looked like origami. His table was all glass and candlelight, a perfectly placed island in the channel of attention. Maya watched, not because he was Elias Rourke, but because the humidity of the room shifted around him. People tightened. Spoons clinked too hard in their bowls. The 5 men became less like 5 and more like something with a single mind. She moved. She offered champagne to a couple celebrating an anniversary because the man had worn his nicest white shirt tonight and it was sweating under the arms. "Congratulations," she said, voice lowered to a velvet that made people forgive her for interrupting their hunger. The tray lay quiet against her palm. She stepped sideways as the security detail that wasn't a detail drifted nearer Rourke. 4 people who traded suits for stillness, stillness for weapons. Except. Maya counted 3. "What happened to your 4th?" she murmured as she slid past the maitre d'. He pretended not to hear the girl who carried the glasses. Maybe because she was 27 and wore the restaurant's colors and served other people their courage, he didn't remember her face. "Bathroom," he said, eyes on Rourke. Maya carried the champagne to table 7. Table 7 was where the boy with the bitten cuticles sat, nursing seltzer as if it were penance. She set a glass on the tablecloth and saw his pupils pulse. Fear was a smell. It soured the corners of a room and made movement squeak. "Compliments of the house," she said, making her voice friendly, light, useless. He looked up, blinked like a man waking underwater. "I don't drink." Maya slid the flute away, unbothered. "Then it's for luck," she said, and left the glass anyway. Her grandmother had taught her to read lips at 6 when the old television sputtered without sound. Her grandfather had taught her to fight with a broom handle at 9, the 2 of them in an alley that smelled like hot trash and peaches, because he said the world did not deserve her, but she had to live in it anyway. "2 eyes never close," he'd said. "If your heart is sleeping, let your hands be awake." Now Maya watched the 5 men. She watched as the heavy-set man's mouth shaped a word without voice as the kitchen doors swung now. Chapter 2. Glass, when you tell the story later, it always starts with something that shatters. The boy in the suit by the window drew out a knife, the polite kind a restaurant gives you to pretend you're safe. He scraped the blade against the tablecloth in a fast, angry X. The hoodie man stood, palm swinging, and his empty glass flew, arcing, a dark comet. The piano hit a chord and stayed on it, the pianist frozen with a raised hand. Maya didn't drop the tray. She set it on the nearest table with a grace that felt insane and stepped into the chaos like it was a dance she knew. A scream began somewhere but broke in the throat, swallowed. A woman clutched her child, face porcelain with shock. Rourke rose, his mouth a line. One of his 3 security men reached him. The second froze halfway, his gaze snagged by something else. The third, Maya had no line of sight on the third. The heavyset man moved with surprising speed, as if gravity had made a bet on him and lost. He barreled toward Rourke's table. The boy from table 7 didn't move. The man by the window stepped onto his chair, then the table. It was ungainly, and yet it worked. He had height now, and he had the kind of rage that makes a person tall. Maya angled for the kitchen. Not to run, she had to get to the knives. "Down," she said, low but sharp, to a couple staring at the rising man like you watch a storm come in, fascinated by the shape of your own fear. She pushed the woman gently, but as if the room were sinking and she had to get them to the air. Under. They went. The piano bench screeched, pans crashed somewhere. In the kitchen, the heat slapped her across the face. The sous chef was in the middle of a curse when Maya slid past him and snatched 2 linen napkins and the longest chef's knife from the magnetic strip on the wall. She wrapped the handle in linen so it wouldn't slip in her hand and grabbed her corkscrew from her apron pocket. A corkscrew doesn't look like much, but it's leverage in a fist. Her grandfather would have said it was permission. But knives were bright and loud. She needed quieter weapons. She grabbed a salt canister. A fistful of salt throws stars in enemy eyes. On the way back through the swinging doors, she passed Morgan, the dishwasher, who had taken his hearing aids out for the shift, a habit that made the world simple and the work clear. Morgan saw her looking and signed the question into her face, "Are you okay?" with fingers slick and fast. He didn't speak, but he knew every sound because he had learned it through tremor. "Lights," she signed back fast, using the shape of her hands to carve meaning in air. "Kill 3, 1. Morgan's eyes widened. He nodded. The dining room exploded. The kind of motion that feels like fire moves through a crowded place, and at this time wore faces. The hoodie man had made it to Rourke. The security man met him with a fist. The hoodie man had weight, but the guard had training. The punch would have put most men on their backs. The hoodie man took it and stayed close, his knife hand jammed into the space between ribs and elbow. He had probably fought in a place without rules. That kind of knowledge lives in the body forever. The man on the table shouted something, but his mouth was swallowed by noise. Maya was already moving toward him, her knife low and invisible. He was off balance. A chair wobbled under his foot. She slid in, her body small, and flicked her wrist as she'd been taught 20 years ago in an alley, the blade slicing not flesh but pants, clean through his belt. It was unthinkably childish and strangely effective. He grabbed for his falling pants, and by the time his hands were busy, Maya had a hand at his ankle. She yanked with everything she had. He fell like a man learning to pray. She threw salt. It fanned into an old-fashioned halo across his eyes, and he screamed because pain is more surprising than blood. She put the corkscrew to his throat, knuckles white, body low, knife invisible. "Don't," she said. Something changed. Somewhere a switch flipped. The broadcast lights that made Elysian feel like a better version of reality died into a twilight that made the windows into mirrors. Then a third of the room went black as Morgan killed the lights on the far side. Maya felt the room exhale. She could see better in the dark. "Get under," she said to the child who'd frozen under the table where the falling man had intended to stand. The girl moved like a deer, and Maya's breath didn't release until she saw the child wrap arms around her mother. The boy at table 7 was on his feet. He hadn't touched the champagne. He ran at Maya's shoulder. No, he ran past her toward Rourke, and that was when she saw what was wrong with all of this. It wasn't the knives or the broken glass or the dark. It was the emptiness at Rourke's left. The security man who should have been there wasn't. Not because he'd been blocked, because he hadn't intended to be. Then she heard a voice in a corner she could only call her other ear. A whisper with weight. She couldn't hear the words through the noise, but she could see the mouth of the woman in black, tucked by the bar, head tilted toward the earpiece coiled at her jaw. Maya watched the lips shape. 2 minutes. Who was she speaking to? Who was she waiting for? The hoodie man had Rourke in a grip that would have left bruises across the bicep. Rourke's eyes were too dry in the dark. He looked at Maya, not at the knife, at Maya, like he recognized her, like he'd been expecting this. She moved. The piano lid fell with a bang. People screamed no and please and don't. The person wearing the broken belt tried to stand and collided with a table leg hard enough that several knives snapped to the floor. The boy with the bitten cuticles stumbled, caught himself, and then saw Maya coming. "I don't want to do this," he blurted in Spanish, his accent Central American, his fear making his voice the exact pitch of a lullaby on the wrong night. "I know," Maya said in the same language, in the mother tongue she'd borrowed from her grandfather's friends and her own grandmother's telenovelas. "Who told you to?" "He has my daughter," the boy said. His mouth shook on the word. He said if I didn't heed." "Where is she?" "Photos," he choked, tears ugly and sudden. "He sends his name Gavi, the broker. He said make it look messy. He said I can't." Maya's stomach went cold. She could have guessed. Coercion wore many colognes, but the particular cruelty of the word daughter wrapped fingers around her heart and squeezed. "Don't move," she told him, stepping into the path of the man in the hoodie. "Miss." It was the man in the suit who had fallen. He reached out weakly, blindly. "Miss, please?" She couldn't help him yet. She went for the hoodie man's wrist. He had leverage, she had angles. She wove her arm under his, stepped into him, used his force to send his knife away, and then kneed him in the thigh where nerve and bone made a fault line. He groaned and his fingers went soft, and for a second they were both human in the most embarrassing of ways. She wrenched the knife with a twist that made her own wrist ache, and now she was the one with the blade and he was the one with empty hands, and there was a sliver of time where you could have convinced yourself what you were doing was something like justice. "Stop," she said to all five. To the 3 security men who weren't moving right, to the woman with the earpiece, to the teenager who hadn't come here to kill anyone but who would. "Why would they?" Elias Rourke said calmly and smiled. It looked better on television. Chapter 3, Personal Maya hadn't planned to stay this long at Elysian. The plan had been months. The plan had been save money, pull her father out of the nursing facility that smelled like antiseptic rain and loneliness, get him into the small apartment near the train where she could let the sunlight fall on him like it used to when he watched soccer, maybe learn to breathe again when she came home. Her father had lost the words first. Then, slowly, the parts of his face that knew how to make laughter. He sometimes squeezed her hand until it hurt but said nothing. Maya told herself he still lived inside somewhere. That he remembered his wife, who had died when the medical bills clicked past impossible. That he remembered the way her hair looked the last day before the chemo took it. How she had smelled like cookies even when she burned them. How she had, on good days, thrown her head back and howled at bad TV until the whole building laughed with her. Maya told herself, over and over, that one day he would say her name again. When she saw Rourke on screens giving speeches about access, about invisible people becoming visible, about basic needs democratized by platform technology, she looked away. She knew too much. The free app his company rolled out to help low-income families manage medications had sold the data that killed her mother's privacy piece by piece, until the insurance company could predict the exact moment when their bills would be high and their coverage would be low. The water purifiers the Rourke Foundation had sent to rural communities in the Philippines had a filter that lasted half as long as advertised, and the replacement cost more than anyone there could pay. People forgot to change the filter. People drank what they thought was clean. "Numbers are close," her friend said, when she'd had a second drink a while back and let herself talk. "They aren't the same thing as the truth." Maya wasn't a fighter by romance. She became one because she was short, brown, and smart in rooms where those were 3 strikes. She loved the order of there being a move when you needed it. Knife versus empty hand, wrist lock versus panic, the art of redirecting force. It saved her. It made her less likely to be angry when it counted most. She set the corkscrew to the hoodie man's throat in a way that was safe and looked less so. Let people misinterpret you. That's a kind of power. "Stop," she said again. "Don't take another step." The boy at table 7 cut his eyes at her. She shook her head slightly. "Trust me." He nodded once, shaky, and lowered his blade as if he could drop the future with it. "Why are you doing this?" she said to Rourke, still steady. "Why are they here?" Rourke's smile held. It looked like when a man absolutely declines to be haunted. "I came for dinner." "You came to be attacked." He lifted his napkin and set it on the table with a quiet that made itself heard. "You're a waitress," he said gently, like he was apologizing to her for the whole world. "I forgive you for not understanding how my life works." "No," she said more gently still, "you're a brand." The word landed like a light finally catching its bulb. She turned her face slightly to the woman by the bar, to the earpiece coiled like a small black thought. "Who are you waiting for?" The woman no more than flinched. Maya read it like text, her lips shaped 1 minute. To kill who? The question was an electric wire. If this had never been about Rourke's body, what was it about? She read the room. The tables closest to Rourke were half evacuated. The pianist had vanished. The boy she'd tripped, no, the man, was blinking away salt. The security man by the door had his hand on a guest's shoulder, pressing him back down with a gentleness that looked like care and felt like threat. In the corner, a woman with a journalist's bag sat on her phone, head down, as if texting for rescue. She looked like no one. She was too deliberate in wanting to be no one. Maya had memorized faces. She had seen this one on a podcast once, no picture, just a voice. Priya Dalal, investigative journalist, the kind who stepped into fire and thought of the children first. Maya's mouth went dry. If you were going to kill someone anonymously in a room full of cameras and witnesses, you killed the person no one was looking at. If you were going to stage a crime for a feed, you made sure the feed focused elsewhere. "Morgan," she signed toward the kitchen, her hand low, her motion making sense only to the one who read hands best. A circle, then a square, then a quick cross. Open the emergency shutters just enough for a corner of light. Then a new sign, delay, delay, a thumb. He was quick. The earpiece woman shifted her weight by minutes. She was impatient now. The corner of her mouth pulled once in an almost smile when the hoodie man found his breath again. "We never wanted to hurt anybody," the boy said beside Meyer in a burst. His voice was a confession and a damn break. "We were supposed to scare him." Gavi said. "Gavi doesn't matter," Maya said. "You do." She whispered because sometimes we do what strangers tell us when they sound like they love us. She would not sound like love. She would sound like a plan. Rourke stepped forward then, perhaps because he was tired of not being the center of the frame. Maya's knife moved to keep him at arm's length. "You brought them," she said. "Don't flatter me," he said. "I barely have time to make my family happy. You think I could choreograph this?" "I think your head of security could," Maya said. He smiled again, and this time his eyes dragged across the woman with the earpiece. She gave him nothing. Her face was that elegant kind that refuses to tell you how it got here. No makeup that showed, hair severe with expensive discretion. Right hand curled on the bar top, not for show. "Ready?" "What do you want?" Rourke asked the 5 men, as if it was suddenly important he appear magnanimous. "Money." He had the patience of someone who could afford a new minute. The heavy-set man's voice surprised them by being beautiful. "We want you to tell the truth," he said. "You killed the lake." "What lake?" Rourke asked, genuinely baffled or better at it than anyone in the room. "Huacachina," said the heavy-set man, accent Peruvian, his breath turning into steam that wasn't there. "My brother's daughter." The filter turned black. "We didn't know yet. She coughed so hard." His voice broke as if he were apologizing to the room for making it hear this. "What is money when a child is different now?" He swallowed his rage. Rourke's face did not alter. Maybe he wasn't that good. Maybe he was. "I'm sorry for your loss," he said calmly. "The Rourke Foundation has a team working." The lights changed again. A harsher white from the kitchen cut across darkness, an accidental stage light painting the corner where Priya sat, head bowed. The earpiece woman's eyes flinched. For all her training, she looked. That was all Maya needed. She moved. Chapter 4, the broker Maya went through people like water because she knew where their soft parts were. Your ribs protect your lungs but leave vulnerability between. Your hips are a hinge, not a bolt. Her height, which had felt like a lessening as a child, became a blade now. She slid under a surprised elbow, pivoted at the waist, and was behind the earpiece woman before the woman fully registered she had moved. "Who are you?" Maya whispered, her left hand close to the woman's shoulder blade, her right pushing the knife through air in a figure 8 that was both threat and comfort. The woman smiled, a narrow thing. "I am the storm when you carry an umbrella. Evasive, gifted, dangerous. Name?" "Madeline Kincaid," she said, "and your little performance is over." "Whose phone are you on?" Maya said to the skin at her neck. "Who promised you a silver rope to climb if you pulled us all down?" Kincaid's mouth did not move, but her hand slipped in a movement too small to name, and from beneath the bar she slid something black and terrible and almost silent. Dumb metals. The only thing that made noise was the heartbeat in Maya's ears. You do not ever want to be close to a gun. Maya had been near enough to one once before, and her bones said no with an insistence that made her teeth hurt. She pushed Kincaid's wrist hard up, and the suppressed shot ate the top corner of a wine bottle instead of the skull of a woman who had tried to become no one. Glass exploded like confetti from a vanishing trick. Priya Dalal dropped from her chair and rolled. She was a labyrinth in motion. She crashed into Maya's feet because physics had opinions tonight. "Run," Maya said, because sometimes the simplest things save the most lives. Priya ran. Kincaid fired again, too late. A blossom opened in a tablecloth that would never work in this room again. People screamed anew because sound is the second thing your body does when it can't find air. The three security men finally seemed to have instructions. One grabbed Rourke and hustled him low and fast toward the kitchen. Another blocked Maya with the kind of practiced self-belief that makes someone dangerous even when wrong. The third positioned his body so he would catch a bullet meant for someone else. The five men scattered, not like birds, but like men who had not practiced this moment, because no one had. The boy did not run. He stayed and shook. "Morgan," Maya shouted at the kitchen, not able to sign and slice at the same time. "Fire alarm!" The alarm couldn't go off without sprinklers. The sprinklers would make the expensive room scream. They would pour water, blind, cool, overflow the fear. They would make the gun worse for a second and then better for everyone after that. Water is a truth. Morgan hauled on the lever. The system stuttered for a heartbeat. Then the sky fell. White noise. Silver rain. The room devolved into a winter of droplets and shock. The candles hissed and died. The sound made the gun smaller. Kincaid cursed, real and sharp, as her hair cracked out of its severity. She reached for the earpiece, screamed something that became unintelligible in the rain. Maya took the moment and did something her grandfather had told her never to do. She kicked Kincaid in the knee. It wasn't elegant. It was effective. Kincaid went down without grace, her weapon skittering across the floor into a puddle of expensive Sauvignon. Maya didn't go for it. She dived instead toward Priya. Priya had knocked her shoulder into the corner of the bar when she ran. She was too bright to realize pain would have to wait. "Here," Maya said, fumbling at her apron pocket, pulling out her phone. "I can't stream this." "You can." Priya stared at her with eyes that remembered every detail. "Who are you?" "Waitress," Maya said. "Not stupid. Take it." Priya took the phone. The screen woke underwater. She pressed with 2 fingers. The live feed swam into being with a sound that wasn't water or fear, a chime of connection. Priya lifted the camera, a sure hand in a flood. "This is Priya Dalal," she said, steadying the lens on her face and then on Rourke's back as he disappeared into the kitchen. "We are live at Elysian as a staged attack." Yes, I said staged, unfolds during the arrival of CEO Elias Rourke. Shots fired. Sprinklers engaged. This appears to be a diversion for an attempted assassination of a journalist. "That's you," Maya said. Priya flashed the smallest grin. "Always wanted someone to try to kill me," she said. "Makes it easier to explain to my mother what I do." The boy with the bitten cuticles had moved to stand in front of Maya as if that were enough to save her life. He shook like rain was a new kind of weather. He was thinner than the hoodie made him look, his hips childlike beneath fabric. "You should go," Maya told him softly. "Your daughter, what's her name?" "They call her Leonida," he said, "because she was pale when she was born and because they wanted her to be round and strong." He laughed and it sounded like a cough. "Leonida needs you to walk out alive," Maya said. "Put the knife down." He did. It hit the floor with a sound like someone playing ping-pong with a ghost. The heavyset man snarled something that might have been prayer. He shoved a chair aside and made for the kitchen, because at the end of the day, the heart wants to be where it thinks the story ends. Maya followed, soaked, knife in hand. Kincaid cussed in low languages behind them. Priya's camera drank the light where there was none. Chapter 5, Heat the Kitchen, was white, bright, clean until it wasn't. Water sprayed from the ceiling onto burners and steam curled like anger. People pressed themselves into corners and tried to look helpful or invisible or both. Chefs lifted knives as if they were flags. The emergency exit flashed red where it should have been green. Rourke's detail had formed a triangle with Rourke in the middle, a geometry of importance. They moved him toward the service elevator, which would open into the kind of hallway no one remembered existed until they needed it. The air smelled like rosemary and metal. "Stop," Maya said. The lead guard looked at her with the conflict of a man who knew he should ignore her and could not. "Ma'am," he said formally, "this is not your restaurant, place, life," Maya said. "But it is. I've picked salt from under its nails." Priya's voice cut through. Madeline Kincaid, she called, still filming even as she stayed low by the pastry counter. Head of security for Rourke Industries. Background, private intelligence. Former contractor for the Department of the paying one. Fired from 2 agencies for being too efficient at things no one wanted to be efficient at. You have anything to say, Miss Kincaid? Kincaid smiled, wet and terrible. Sprinkler water made everyone human. I think, she said, some stories are better left untold, Miss Dallel. Is that why you tried to shoot them? Priya asked, without moving the lens off her. That, Kincaid began and never finished because Maya put a knife to the space where people decide to lie. Are those your men? Maya asked Rourke, because everything turned on who you trusted to open the door. He looked at her with the complex grace of someone who has rehearsed for every eventuality and did not like something unscripted. Yes, he said. Then where is your 4th? She asked again. Rourke blinked rain from his lashes. For the first time tonight, he looked tired. Bathroom, he repeated, and because the room had changed since the first time he said it, the answer fell different. The sous chef, whose husband fixed water heaters by day and wrote poetry by night, rolled his eyes so subtly that no one but Maya and Priya saw. The service elevator, Maya said, pointing. Stop now. She didn't shout. She said it like she could make the air obey. Rourke's lead guard opened his mouth to say a polite no. Then the elevator pinged. It was a ridiculous noise, a cheerful one, a note that did not belong in a story like this. The door slid open and something darker than this floor shimmered behind it. The man inside didn't look like a fucking poem. He looked like an afterthought, which was also to say he looked like the victory. He wore a server's uniform, and if you hadn't already memorized every face in the room, you would have thought he belonged. People belong until they don't. He raised his gun. Maya moved before thought. She plunged her knife deep into the door jamb, and as the metal rattled and stalled, the elevator doors stuttered, half open, half closed, a mouth trying to make a decision. The man inside fired. The bullet embedded itself in the metal door as if the building had chosen tonight to be brave. The lead guard flinched backward. Maya leapt forward and hit the close button so hard she thought she'd break bone. The doors shuddered into motion, then shut, and the elevator, with its bullet and betrayal and everything, went down. Silence opened, not complete. The sprinklers still hummed. Someone coughed. A baby cried and then slept because its mother knew how to make the world small for 1 more minute. That was your 4th, Maya said. Rourke said nothing. The chambered air around him deflated. The heavy-set man stepped forward. He had once carried a girl on his shoulders so she could see fireworks over water. He had once held the man he loved as he died, and it had made him see his own face as if in a mirror. He had once promised not to be boring for the rest of his life, and he had broken that promise, as all men do. The truth, he said softly to Rourke. Say it, you sold our breaths, and you sold our clean, and you did not say it out loud. Rourke stared at him like he was old glass. Then, something in his expression shifted, not like a mask dropping, but like a man who had held something heavy for too long and had to set it down, or it would break him anyway. The filters are fine, he said, and even he sounded bored by that lie now. The cameras were on him even if he refused to see them. Priya raised her phone a fraction to make him taller in the frame. The filters, he said again, and swallowed. The first batch had an issue. One of his guards flinched as if to run interference. Rourke lifted a hand slightly. We knew in testing they might fail, a minor contaminant. We factored the percentage. It was a cost, Priya said. Her voice hardened until it was almost kindness. You calculated how many people would die. Rourke closed his eyes. We called it acceptable loss. Maya felt her stomach protest the water. She tasted bile and lemon. Kincaid hissed something like, you idiot, but Rourke had committed to his own truth and could not yet see how it was also his end. Why? Maya asked softly, because there was always a why, and sometimes it made you hate yourself less before it made you hate yourself more. Because someone else would have beaten us to market, he said. Because the heat was coming. Because when a dam is shaking hard enough, you either run or you put your weight on it and pray you're heavy enough. Children died, the heavy-set man whispered. There is no weight heavy enough to keep that down. Rourke looked at his hands like he'd just noticed they could hold things or let them go. I try, he said, and the room made an ugly sound because try was a toddler verb. I try to. You try to look like you try, Priya said. You have a runway lined with victims, and you've gotten good at pretending they're confetti. Kincaid moved then in a way that said she'd been waiting for the confession she had told him not to make. She lunged for Priya. Maya was already there. She met Kincaid body to body, elbow to sternum, hip to thigh, a crash that made the pastry chef yelp and drop a tower of cream like a collapsed dream. They fell together. Kincaid is older, stronger, taught to make her age a weapon. Maya is smaller, faster, taught to make her small a forest fire. Their fight was a language only they spoke, two women who had learned the hard way that you don't wait for permission to live. Kincaid went for her eyes. Maya tilted her head in the smallest move a person learns only if someone they love has taught them what their face is worth. Kincaid went for her throat. Maya turned her chin, caught Kincaid's forearm, and pinned it to the wet floor. Kincaid used her knees. Maya used the weight of the waterlogged apron, the slippery floor, the humility of being forced low. She arched, trapped, rolled, and came up on top. Her knife was gone, somewhere in the flood. Her hands were her only weapons now. "Stop," Priya said, and the word did something to Kincaid's face no physical weapon could. She looked at Priya like someone had taken a photograph of her when she wasn't ready. "Madeline, you're done." "My job was to keep him alive," Kincaid said, teeth brown with a run of blood. "To keep the company alive. You think a truth like that does anything but bankrupt more people than I can count." "You don't get to break the first commandment," Maya said, breathing hard. "Don't be the reason a child doesn't get to grow up." "There are other commandments, but that one, no." Kincaid spat water and old rage. "You sound like church, and you're a waitress. What do you know about the rules?" "Enough to keep food hot," Maya said. "Enough to keep knives sharp. Enough to know that whether I'm carrying a tray or a truth, it's heavy." Kincaid stilled. The fight let go of her. She lay back on the slick tile like a woman on a hotel bed who will cry only when the elevator dings down the hall. The guards reached for her. Priya spoke into camera. The world was watching a story about 5 men attacking a billionaire CEO in a restaurant, and somehow, as always, the smaller story, a waitress, a knife, a word, was the one that broke the skin. Chapter 6. Doorways. The police came like a cold front, inevitable, damp, bad timing. Sirens died quiet in the hallway. The water kept pouring because systems do what systems do until someone says stop. People coughed and told each other they had been there, that they were brave, that they would tell this story better than anyone else because their version would have humor or tenderness or the thing that betrayed them most. The 5 men stood in a line without meaning to. The boy took a step, and then another, and then dropped to his knees on a floor that had not expected such reverence. He raised his hands. Rain or sprinklers made a veil across his face. He whispered Leonida like it was the password to a life. Maya went to him. Her knees hit hard. She met his eyes until they looked like something she recognized. "She is not a bargain," Maya said. "She is a child." He nodded over and over as if gratitude were a drill. He said, Gavi said, "What he says does not define your next minute," she said, and pulled her phone away from Priya for a beat with a look that said, "Trust me." Priya flicked her lens to a bleeding tablecloth, as if she had always intended to. Maya dialed Oleg, because of course she kept the numbers no one else did, because the cousin of the busboys, cousin ran with men who could find girls in rooms where only bad deals were made. Because even if it made her the kind of person who should be careful, it made her the kind of person who could help. "Oleg," she said, "I need you, that broker, Gavi. He took a child, get her." His sigh came through the line like a train. "You owe me forever." "I know," Maya said and hung up. She did not say thank you because some favors you do not name. They sour when you do. Gratitude can be a wound if you're not careful. Priya had started narrating with a calm that felt borrowed and returned. "Elias Rourke has just confessed to knowingly releasing water filters with a failure rate his team deemed acceptable loss," she said into the camera. "His head of security, Madeline Kincaid, attempted to shoot this reporter during the confusion following an attack staged on Rourke by 5 men who appear to have been coerced. We will continue live coverage." "Cut," Maya said quickly, because sometimes safety looks like interruption. Priya stopped, surprised. "The feed is rolling," Priya said. "I don't think we should. There's someone we need to think about more than we need to think about being first," Maya said. "If Gavi is watching and if he thinks the boy is about to sing—" "He hurts the girl," Priya finished, teeth clamping shut around the sentence. "She killed the live, but not the camera. She turned it to record." "You're good," Priya said in a voice like a bandage. "I've been poor long enough to know how to be useful," Maya said. The police officers were wet and sure in their wetness. They did the thing where they try to put order back with their hands. They took statements and names and glances and guns. They looked at Maya and saw something both less and more than they feared. "Ma'am," one began, "please tell us your—" "Maya Ibarra," she said. "I work here. I'd like to keep my job if it makes any moral sense for me to." "After tonight," the officer said, a kind laugh in his mouth that he hadn't earned. "I'm a waitress," Maya said. "We always show up for the next day." Rourke stood near the service door, now propped open with a bin and a chef's stoic foot. He looked at Maya like the floor had become your face does when you see someone you haven't been brave enough to imagine for a decade. "You," he began and stopped. "What?" she said. "You don't forgive me," he said. He sounded almost confused. In his life, people forgave him for things even if he didn't ask. It was baked into the food they served him. "No," she said, "but I can tell the truth about you. That's almost like forgiveness in a different religion." "What do you want?" he asked, and it was the first honest question he had asked all night. "Three things," Maya said, and in another time or place it would have felt insane to ask a man who could move satellites to pay attention to a woman who could move plates. But here they were. "You don't press charges against any of the five. Your lawyers will make phone calls I can't. They go home. 2, your foundation stops distribution. You issue a recall. Today, you pay for replacements that actually work. And 3, what?" he said, bracing for something he could never pay for. "You look in the camera and say that you are sorry and mean it." Maya said it like she was asking him to carry a tray for her. "Not in a statement, not with words someone else wrote. When you're done, I want you to go home and try to learn how to keep that feeling, because if you lose it, you will destroy more than the filters." Rourke blinked. "That last one is the only one you can do," Maya said. "Everything else will be done for you. The world will not give you a choice." Rourke looked at the police officer who had drifted closer. The officer lifted a shoulder in a gesture that was part shrug, part prayer. Rourke did the math and realized for once in his life feelings came before numbers. He swallowed. "I'm sorry." She shook her head. "No," she said, "not for me." He turned to Priya's camera, not the live one, the better one. The one that would run on the bigger screen. He swallowed again in a way that made the vein in his temple jump. It was terribly human. It was also politics. "I am," he said and stopped. He tried again. "I apologized for loss before. Most of the time, it meant I was apologizing for the numbers not lining up how I liked. Children died because I allowed something to go to market that none of us would want in our homes. People who trusted me got hurt. His voice frayed. He ran his hand over his face like he could rub the version of himself who was good into the version who was here. "I am sorry. I cannot say it better yet, and because you don't know me, you have no reason to believe this." He lifted his eyes. "But I will prove it anyway." It wasn't enough. It was also more than most. Kincaid laughed then, a sound that might have been better had she not made it. "You think this saves you," she said to Rourke, "and it won't. There's more than this. There's always more. You are a tide. Tides always come back. I am sorry for that, Maya Ibarra. You will live long enough to hear people tell this story the wrong way." Maya met her gaze and nodded like an agreement that wasn't one. "I can't keep the way people tell stories," she said. "I can only keep the way I listen to them." Chapter 7. The girl named Moon. The police took statements like they were knitting a sweater out of rain. Priya slipped her card into the hoodie man's damp pocket and whispered something that made him cry for the first time in 10 years. The heavy-set man took his belt off the floor and put it back through the loops. And for a second he was embarrassed, and then he laughed, which made something inside the room unclench. 3 hours later, long after the sprinklers stopped and people had been shepherded into taxis and ambulances and talking heads, Maya sat in the back alley where the restaurant smoked its cigarettes. The air smelled like time and old anger. The night had resumed its regular sounds: distant siren, the hiss of tires on water, a laugh from above in the apartment where 2 people made up after a fight. Her phone vibrated. It was a number she didn't know. She answered because that was the kind of night it was. "She is running," a man said in accented English that carried fatigue like a child. "Leonida, she is running. She is okay." Maya closed her eyes. She put her head back against brick and let the air into the parts of her that had made themselves small. "Thank you, Oleg." "Don't thank me. Thank your fight," he said. "The broker is upset because he lost his dog. He is also bleeding. He will think twice next time he tells a father to do something he is not born to do." Maya's laughter surprised her. It was unpretty and alive. "Will he?" "No," Oleg said, and they both smiled in the dark because yes. But tonight his luck ran away with a small girl who runs fast. Make sure boy knows. He will collapse otherwise. She could have taken the news to the boy herself. She could have found him in the holding room, told him Lunita ran, that her knees were white with scrapes like the moon had fallen on them, that she will need to sleep for a week because fear uses muscle memory. She asked for permission to see him. She was granted this grace. He looked up when she pushed the door and walked in. The room was nothing, a table and a metal breath, another security guard who had learned the face he wore for the public and kept it. The boy's hands were on the table, palms up. He looked very young. He would look older by morning. She is okay, Maya said. She is running. He swallowed. His throat worked. I don't what? She is safe, Maya said. They will bring her to you. You need a lawyer. Priya will find you one. You need to drink water. She handed him the bottle like she were handing him a child. No sudden moves. Everything slow. He cried then. He cried like a door had opened inside him and the water had been waiting all his life. It wasn't loud. It made the guard look down because men sometimes don't know where to put their eyes when someone's heart spills. Maya stood there and let the noise be because it felt like the only clean water he'd been given lately. What is your name? She asked. Mateo, he said. I am going to name my next child whoever you are, she laughed. Let's just keep Lunita out of this city's hands for now. You have someone, he asked, and perhaps it is indecent to be curious about the life of the person who saved you, but also perhaps it is indecent not to be. He wanted to tether himself to something. He wanted the story to continue past the end credits. My father, she said. He was a plumber. He taught me to fix leaks. Then something broke we could not fix. Why did you save him? Mateo asked, meaning Rourke now, and the confusion in his face was almost tender. Why did you save that man? Because saving him saved you, she said, because sometimes the math is clear if you decide to look at it that way. And because I wanted him to live long enough to tell the truth where more than 2 people could hear it. Mateo nodded like he could see the curve of it. My mother said the moon is different in every country, he said, but it's also the same. She was right, Maya said. He wiped his face with his sleeve in a gesture so boyish it hurt. I didn't want to be this. I know, she said. Sometimes we are what we do anyway. When she left the room, Priya was waiting outside like a shadow that had learned to be kind. You okay? Priya asked. Maya shrugged. I saved a billionaire because I didn't want a child to die, she said. I don't know if okay is a word that should touch that. Priya laughed once, soft. You're going to be famous for a week, she said. You can hide or ride it. She tilted her head. I think you'll hide. Probably, Maya said. I have a lunch shift. They looked at each other like people who had jumped from a plane and who now had to figure out how to land. Priya said, You want a job, not as a waitress. You want a new partner who knows where to stand so that the camera gets the truth? Yes, Priya said. Maybe, Maya said. I have to put my father in the sun first. Do that, Priya said. Then call me. She wrote her number on Maya's palm with a pen that miraculously still wrote after the flood. It felt like a promise written into skin. Chapter 8. How people remember the news did what the news does. In the morning, a woman who hadn't been there yet had something to say about Maya's dress and what it meant. A man in a suit explained Maya's knife work into a graphic that made it look like a football play. A columnist wrote, We are all Maya, and Maya snorted into her coffee because no, we are not, and also sometimes she wished we were. Elias Rourke released a statement so careful it could have been used to balance a table. In it, he said everything he'd said on Priya's camera and less. His board issued a correction, then an apology, then a list of steps. Money moved in directions it had not liked to travel before. Some of those steps mattered. Most were white paint on weathered wood. Kincaid was charged. Her name trended. Then Mateo's did for an hour. Then Lunita's, and her mother begged us to please not please. Her name is hers. The broker's face went up in 3 places at once, and in all of them he was handsome in a way only someone with power is. Maya put on a jacket that made her feel like a complaint someone couldn't ignore and went to the facility where her father lived. She signed in. The overnight nurse, who had been a dancer once and whose hair held memories of stage lights, blinked at her. You're the girl, she said, and then blushed because it was a lousy thing to say to someone whose life made headlines. I'm the girl, Maya said. I'm also the daughter. Her father looked at her and made the small noise that was his yes now. The sun came through the window and made patterns on the floor. She pulled the chair close and told him a story he would not remember. She told him not about the gun or the rain or the apology, but about a little girl named Moon who ran so fast her knees went white. She told him about a woman with a camera who turned her fear into work. She told him about a man who thought he could carry a dam on his back and learned he was smaller than water. Her father watched her with the reverence of a man being sung to. He had once danced with her mother on a sidewalk because the music from a wedding had spilled into the street and made it okay. He had once held her above his head and said the word sky like it belonged to them. He did not do those things now. He pressed her hand and made the sound again. Yes. Do you remember Lolo? She asked, widening her eyes into the kind of hope you should never ask of the elderly. How he used to hit the broom against the alley wall and yell again until the neighbors yelled again too? Her father's lips shaped a memory. The corner lifted. It might have been the sun in his mouth. It was enough. The next week, Elysian closed for renovations. The floor needed sanding. The ghosts needed new corners. A week after that, the restaurant quietly replaced its knives. They were slightly smaller. They offended no one, and is there anything sadder? Priya called because she had said she would. Ready, she said. Maya looked at the dishes in the sink, at her father in the back room, at the tray propped against the wall, at the phone that vibrated with strangers saying I love you and I hate you and you saved me and you saved him and who are you? Almost, she said. There's no almost, Priya said. There's now and the other thing. Maya smiled in a way Priya could hear. There's always almost, she said. That's the part that keeps me human. You're good at this, Priya said. Words. I'm good at balance, Maya said. Trays, knives, days. And people, Priya said. You're good at people. Maya thought of a boy whose hands had been palms up on a table, of a heavy-set man who had wept over a present tense child who had become past tense, of a woman whose job had turned her into a blade, of a billionaire who finally tasted salt that wasn't on his dinner. She thought of her Lolo's broom, of her grandmother's telenovelas played with the sound off, of the way her father had always told her to love the ends of the day because that was when people's hearts were closest to the surface. Sometimes, she said. Call me when your answer is yes, Priya said. I want to tell bigger truths and I need your hands to help hold them. After they hung up, Maya stood at the window and watched the city wake like someone learning their name for the first time. The skyline was hunched and beautiful. The river looked like a place you could forgive yourself. The reflection in the apartments opposite moved from night's face to days, slow as kindness. She went back to the chair where her father sat with the blanket tugged up over his knees in the summer because the nurses always set the thermostat to tundra to keep infection afraid. She took his hand. It was heavy, human. We did something good, she said, and something terrible had to happen to make it happen. That makes the math ugly, but it doesn't erase the good. He blinked. She imagined he was nodding. She decided that counts. Chapter 9, The Night Counts. You people began to tell the story as soon as there were enough minutes between them and the danger to make it narrative. 5 men attacked a billionaire CEO in a restaurant, they said, and a waitress's hidden skill changed everything. They didn't always know what the skill was. Some said she was a martial artist. Some said she had been a spy. Some said she could read minds. The truth was less glamorous and more useful. She had looked up. She had learned to grow a second ear behind her eyes. She had practiced until her hands could do a thing before her mouth could think to stop them. Elias Rourke resigned 3 months later. A quiet resignation, the kind where a letter says, for my family, and means, because my board and the world and God told me I should. He didn't show up to work the next morning. He appeared instead on a park bench in an unimportant city with a book about philosophy and an expression like someone trying to read in a language they didn't study enough in school. He donated a sum that maybe helped, and it wasn't enough, and it also was. Madeline Kincaid is appealing. She will probably serve time. She will carry herself through prison like a person who knows how to walk down a hallway without making a sound. She will be visited by a woman with a camera who will listen instead of speak, and when she speaks, she will say, "We made each other into weapons. That's the day I stopped." The boy named Mateo will hold his daughter's hand, and she will not let go for months. She will sleep with her knees drawn up, a new animal curled against an old one. He will say her name often enough that it wears a groove in the air that holds her there, even when she is elsewhere. He will call Maya once to say that he has decided to work at night and sleep in sunlight so that he can see her awake. Maya will tell him that is good, that some choices feel like daylight even when they happen at midnight. The heavyset man will go home to a place that smells like earth. He will plant trees. He will not forgive Rurk. He will also discover he can forgive himself sometimes. He will laugh again in lines that surprise him. Priya will win an award that will make her mother brag and worry in equal measure. She will not take a new partner yet, because she wants Maya's yes and no one else's. She will call often. Maya will answer sometimes. They will learn that almost is not a failure when you are trying to be kind. Maya will return to work for a while. The restaurant will reopen with a new menu that includes a dish named for a moon. The chef won't admit it's for Leonida, but the ones who know. She will carry trays that feel heavier because she knows now how much a human costs and how much a human weighs. She will put her father in the sun again and again, and there will be one day when he will look at her and say, Hija, and she will sit down so fast she will bruise her legs. She will call Priya that night. There will be tears and plans. Her life will not make easy sense. It will make a different kind of sense, which is to say it will be honest. The last time she sees Elias Rurk, it will be on a television in a bar where the sound is off. He will be older in the way that people get when they have finally tried to drink from the same water they sold to everyone else. He will be listening to someone who isn't afraid of him. He will nod in a way that tells no one anything, and Maya will decide that for once, that is his right. She will walk home. The city will hum. A tree will drop something sweet on the sidewalk that will make her think of her mother. The alley where her grandfather taught her will be gone, replaced by a clean glass building that promises things. She will pass a woman and a child walking toward the bus stop. The mother will say, "Look, baby." The moon, and the child will look up and say, "It looks like the light in the restaurant," and the mother will laugh without knowing anything at all about why that made Maya slow. Maya will go upstairs. She will sit beside her father. She will tell him the same story another way, and he will listen the same way, and that will be enough. The night will remember the sound of knives and the water and a girl named Moon running. It will count the number of times a heart broke and kept beating. It will not keep score like a brand. It will keep score like a human. And if you ask her, years from now, if she would do anything differently, she will say yes. Everything. No. Nothing. That is the terrible, beautiful thing about choosing a side in a room that looks like a room and is actually the whole world. You never know if your hands were clean. You only know if your hands were holding the right thing at the right time, her hidden skill. It wasn't violent, and it was. It was eyes. It was mercy. It was knowing when to move and when to speak and when to let the room hear itself. She changed everything. And then she went back to work, because someone always has to clean the water off the floor after the flood, and because she loved the way the day broke into pieces and made sense again when you held out your hand and said, "Here, this is yours," and then gave it back.